Hello, everyone. Welcome to the last day of Desalytics Water Week. I'd like to thank you all for being here. Today we have two sessions. The first one is about innovation, startups, and the next one is more around digital water, again, innovation, AI, and also audits, several topics. So for the first session, I'm pleased to welcome Antoine Walter. When I was looking at who's going to moderate this session, I thought the only guy who can really do it and get the best out of all the panelists is Antoine. So you probably know Antoine from his non-day-to-day job, which is running the Don't Waste Water podcast, and I'm pleased to welcome Antoine on board.
Well, thanks a lot, Walid, and thanks for the invitation. Thanks for being there, and thanks for having the chance to discuss today with an incredible panel. And Walid will be part of that panel, so it's kind of an inception mode because I'm hosting the host. That's interesting. On that panel, we have beyond Walid, we have Sebastian Andreassen from Cembrane. We have Raivetz from Transcend. We have Frederic Dugre from H2O Innovation, and we have Ramzi Bouzerda just joined us from Droople. So we have a full house here. And we have a fascinating topic to discuss today, which is everything which is linked to innovation, entrepreneurship, and sometimes at the intersection of both of them, we have startups. So that's a bit the pitch for today. But I won't be holding the microphone too long because it's not about me, it's about those incredible guests we have today. And I'd like to start with a very simple exercise, which is why do we need innovation in the water sector? Who's first to take that question? There's a bonus for the first one.
I'll take the question because we're not good at it. Because the industry is not good at innovation. That's why we need more innovation in water.
And now you're going to understand why it's a bit more difficult than that, because now I have to draw on your answer and for the next one. Why is the water industry not good at that?
Maybe I can pick up from there. I think one of the key reasons for the water sector not being particularly good at innovating and adopting new technologies might be because it is to a certain extent highly centralized. It is a big part of the market is controlled by public utilities and governments and centralized decision making. And by nature, they are less likely to adopt new technologies. Whereas in the private sector, there is a certain half-life to companies. They tend to be replaced by younger and better ones over time. And that mechanism is not in place in public utilities and governments to the same extent.
Which leads to the difficult one of why is the public utility so rigid?
Well, I think if I may go ahead and pick it up on this, I think we created our own limitation in a way that, if you think about it, we're doing more or less the same things than what the Romans were doing 2,000 years ago, right? Essentially what we have built as infrastructure today, moving solids from point A to point B, evacuating the wastewater out of the city, is what Rome has been doing for 2,000 years. And this is still today what we're doing. So we kind of fix our own barrier and try to move and create innovation within what we know. So I think we're sometimes a little bit shy to think outside the box with disruptive ideas and welcoming these disruptive ideas in the fact of letting go the current infrastructure that we have spent so much money and so much love to support over the last 40 years, 50 years, 100 years.
And why should we go out of that box?
But maybe I can respond to that, but from my point of view, we have kind of disconnection between what Frederic has told before and just this last mile. And this is my takeaway as an entrepreneur on that specific last mile of the water grid, is that we are not onboarding the end customer ultimately. And utilities can do whatever they do to make and provide good quality water, sufficient water quantity and so on. But if at the end, the people that will use that water didn't care about how they can save it, how they can better use use it and so on. I think we are still trying to knock in on a wall that won't really change.
Last spot for you, Walid. Can you synthesize everything we've seen so far, and why do we need innovation?
That's a tough one. No, I think people don't understand this because we're not doing a good job of communicating the value of water. We're still in the mindset that water is a human right, which it is, but we're not defining to what extent it's a human right. You know, is it like 200 liters per day per person? Is it like 1 cubic meter per day per person? This is where we're not doing a good job of defining the value of the water.
And we consume a transformed product at the end. You know, accessing water is one thing. To your point, that well, it's a right to access it, but you know what we do is we transform it at the end. And for this transformed product, is there someone ready to pay the price? So. Yeah.
So is that really it? Is the root of everything the price and the value of water? Would you say that is, if we did that exercise of the 5 why, that is what comes at the bottom?
It's one aspect, it's one pillar, but of course the value encompasses not only the price, it encompasses also maybe the data or the awareness related to the value of water. And I think if we would like to give a value to water, you have to take into account the design policy of a country or that is really managing water. I take an example here in Switzerland. Most of people or tenants don't pay water according to their water consumption. They pay water according to the surface of the flat for what they pay the bill, so the rent. So there is a disconnection between what I consume and what I pay for. So the value of water is also related to the fact that I'm not concerned about making effort or saving water because I'm not paying for it. Someone will pay for my waste.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it is psychology, right? It's the perception of people, even price. You can argue price and the value that people place on things is very much based on their mentality and their perception of value. And a lot of that comes into psychology. So,
yeah.
So there's a big portion going to education for sure. I mean, if you think about and how the media is supporting it or not, you think about it. You know how many manifestation you saw in population, you know, raising against, you know, or for, you know, the vaccine or no vaccine, mask or no mask. I don't want to have this in my body. I want to have it. But when was the last time you heard population moving to in the streets, you know, saying, I don't want to drink, you know, water with microplastic. I don't want to drink water with PFAS. I don't want to drink water with hormones, you know, never. So it seems that there is a general public acceptance on or less care about it, which is wrong. I mean, because there's water in everything that we consume. So
that is exactly what Rick just shared in the chat, which was saying that water is everywhere. When you have a t-shirt, it's water. It's 2,300 liters of water. So and that is water we don't perceive. I think you nailed it on the why. I'd like to transition to the how. And the how is how all of you have been innovating. And what's interesting with the panel we have today is that you've been innovating, each of you, in a slightly different way. Let me go first with you, Ramzi, because what's interesting with that story when it comes to you is that you sound like the one who does all the cliche, if I might say so. You have this eureka moment in the middle of the night where you're like, oh, that's it. And then you innovate around that. How is it? Am I really making it cartoonesque right now? Or do you see that innovation as something which really popped out of your head at some point in that special night?
Yeah. Well, actually, the eureka moment maybe came a few days later because during at 3 a.m. when I was trying to fill the baby bottle, I thought that something was existing, and afterward I figured out that it was not the case. But yeah, I think we made a long journey before reaching from the Eureka moment to something that brings really value to the water industry or the market. But from my point of view, I think we have been lucky that we are not water specialists or strong water background that would have actually bring more BS to our journey. So we have been able to look at one problem like any other problem and try to bring a solution to that without having this too much expertise in water or too much knowledge about water problems and solutions. And this is maybe this newbie point of view that help us to bring something disruptive. We will see. It's not really proven yet, but we will see.
If I'm right, being a newbie is also your case, Ari, right? So do you share what Ramzi just said, that it is an added value to come from the outside and to bring fresh air in the inside?
I mean, I'm 15 years now in the industry, so okay. It's hard to claim an outsider. But when this innovation was created, I was, maybe 3 years into my water journey. I mean, for Transcend, I think, it was born out of necessity, right? So I came from an investing background and I ran a systems business, and we had to do all of this engineering work, hundreds and hundreds of hours before we could just bid on a project. It was a tremendous bottleneck to being able to distribute what this system happened to be a tremendous innovation for wastewater recycling, but we couldn't get it out there because of this bottleneck. And so we were kind of forced to innovate in order to really survive and come up with a way that we could de-bottleneck that process and then kind of get broad distribution and visibility for this technology and this innovation. So definitely that being from outside the industry played a part in it for sure.
So we had with Ramzi, you had a product innovation in a blue ocean, in the sense that it was not existing. You, Ari, you have something which is, everybody was doing something in a quite painful way, and you're just saying, I can disrupt that and do it a factor times better. How is it different to that extent? Because all of a sudden you have people who might be whether amazed or pissed.
Yeah, definitely a lot of skeptics. And I think it probably goes back to the psychology that we started with, in that, a lot of the industry being public utilities and then being engineering driven. The same people that design bridges or taught how to design bridges in school are the people that design our water and wastewater infrastructure. So that there's a certain level of psychological barrier to and conservatism there. Yeah, I mean, that was it is something that we face every day at Transcend. The software, the technology exists, and this is actually a 10-year-old software product that we, has done tens of thousands of designs. But how do you use it? I mean, we had somebody say to us recently, this is like an iPad. When I first got an iPad, I thought, this thing is really cool. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. And now, that person uses the iPad every day, right? So it does take some time to figure it out.
Let me use that bridge, because an iPad is something quite expensive, and the first time you're convinced that it's cool, but you don't exactly know how and why. And watch me do that, Sebastian. This is similar to your story at Cembrane, because you tried to reduce the overall costs for the industry of the systems you intended to somehow enhance or replace, and you did it with the most expensive material there is. So that's really against the odds, isn't it?
Yeah, when you put it like that, obviously it is. I think we looked at it from a different perspective. as a membrane producer of silicon carbide ceramic membranes, there are a lot of challenges to the conventional way of using membranes in the market, and knowing silicon carbide material, we knew that it could offer a solution to these challenges that were posed by the market. I think we were very optimistic and convinced early on that we were able to industrialize the technology to a point where it became competitive, and where we see today that it's even though it's the most expensive raw material used to make a membrane, perhaps it is in many cases the most commercially viable technology there is. So I think if you use the iPhone or the iPad as an example, it was extremely costly early on, but it also became more and more affordable, which is necessary if you want to reach some mass adoption markets.
You were convinced, but what's the nuance between vision, optimism, or obstination?
Or the same.
That's
the same.
It's good to have a certain level of optimism and wishful thinking early on, in order to believe that you will succeed. But yeah, I think wishful thinking is good to have in a certain portion.
So we were with the membrane topic. Let's take another end of that same membrane topic, but with a different angle, and a company who's put innovation in its name with H2O Innovation. I actually have some pressure with you, Frederic, because as I told you in preparation, when I was reviewing a bit your path, you were named probably the most loved and admired corporate water leader. So now, I feel that on my shoulder, and I have to not piss you with my question. But what's the most innovative in H2O Innovation? Is it the company itself, or is it the way you grow by finding left and right interesting technologies that fit nicely within what you already have?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. And I say our name could carry the name also of H2O Evolution, because this is what we have been doing over the last 22 years, right? Is to adapt to our customers, adapt to situations. We have tried things, didn't work. We had to evolve and adapt ourselves. But essentially what we're trying to do is, as you said it, I mean, we're built around membrane filtration. Our expertise is around membrane filtration. So preserve the membranes. Either we do it with the specialty chemicals we have, or through the engineering and manufacturing of membrane filtration equipment that we do, or even, with some components or pre-filtration systems that we have to, again, protect the membranes, and even through the large team of operators that we have. So in a nutshell, I think H2O is designed in a way with our business model that we'll do everything we can to serve this customer and keep it as long as we can through a bunch of services and surrounded with expertise that we have in membrane filtration, but other field, but mostly membrane filtration. So yes, we have grown through acquisition, and we intend to continue doing it and add different components to it.
To that extent, we had with Ramzi the example of the blue ocean. It's a category of the market, this last mile products and elements, which is not existing. And we have the red ocean with the membrane word. And to that extent, is it helping you to see a company like Cembrane, which is like saying, hey, by the way, silicon carbide is better than polymerics? Or is it a threat? Or is it just adding more ideas in that market and pushing for even more innovation, which at the end of the day solve even more customer problems?
Well, if you ask the question to me, I think it's really good, because in H2O we're membrane agnostic in a sense that we stand right in the line. So we welcome all these innovations for new membranes applications or new materials, because we want to be the first one to try it. So for us, we're somehow like an enabler to the technology. We kind of help to bring it in the market in the most efficient and the most suitable and the most reliable manner. And we work in collaboration with different membranes manufacturing. So yes, we welcome that in a very positive manner.
So we had product innovation, we had process innovation. We see that you can be innovating in the space in the market that you're addressing. You can be disrupting something which is existing. There's a last type of innovation we haven't covered yet, and that's the innovation around the business models. And that is exactly, I mean, we are in Desalytics Water weeks. It's not every company which is doing this kind of event. So it already hints at a different way to address the market. And when I look at the way you're addressing the market, Walid, it's pretty interesting because I think it's pretty new. And when I look at the type of market you're addressing, I mean, everybody says, don't go to Africa. It's difficult to make business there. And if you go to Africa, if there's really one part of Africa which you want to avoid at any kind of cost, it's sub-Saharan Africa. And what do? You bring a new business model to that specific area. Are you mad?
I was really worried that you will never talk about innovation other than product innovation, because in every single exhibition I go to, there are a lot of pavilions around product innovation. When you go to the innovation pavilion, it's mainly products, or maybe like service as a product, But so a little bit of background of how we came to Desalytics. So I used to work for multinationals for 20 years, and we were always trying to find ways to get into Africa. So we've done a lot of VOCs. Not a single one came around product or around, always the same consistent message from customers was we need products to be available, not the features, the products to be available, and we need local support. So they know there are plenty of products out there, that can deliver their needs, but they need them to be available and having the right support around them. So we stepped back and we looked what are really the challenges in Africa, why people are not there. So first, it's too fragmented. So you cannot go and open an office for a multinational in every single country. It's very fragmented. And then also there are political risks, there are currency risks. You have also geopolitical, we mentioned, you have conflicts, commodity risks. Some of these countries are relying on oil, some of them are mining. So there are a lot of risks. So we said, let's step back one more step and look at what are the 10 types of innovation of Dublin's model. So we said, okay, let's look into it. And as you know, it's broken down by 3 buckets: configuration, offering, and also experience. Offering, we don't have any issues. There are plenty of products, good products available, like the companies represented now on this discussion. How can we work on the configuration and the experience? Some of the models on partnership locally and partnership externally. So as you rightly mentioned on the Desalytics Water Week, our value is our partners, our suppliers, and the technologies we represent, and we help them to get into the market, And from the customer side, we need to be locally present. And that's why we went on building a distribution network across these countries. So either through acquisitions, because, like one of the pillars of the 10 type of innovation is the network. So either through acquisitions or startups, so finding different ways of improving processes, another dimension, having the right processes at scale so it can be competitive, but at the same time enhancing the customer experience by being there, being available, ready for a call, and so on. So it's a bit different, as you mentioned, Antoine. It's not about the product itself, and we partner with really top-notch companies and deliver them their products in Africa, and we're evolving also, as Frederic mentioned. So we started with what we thought was the right model, and we're evolving. Now we're moving from a supplier distribution model type of business to where we're having the supplier embedded in our operations in Africa. So basically, we're in discussion with one company and to have their own team embedded in our subsidiaries in Africa. So the customers see really value without the added cost of the multinational itself going and opening offices in every single country.
After that first round with all of you, I'd like to take 2 questions from the audience. And the first question is a question which I guess applies to all of you. It's a question from Rick Segers, who's asking, how long does it take in the water industry for a new idea product becomes acceptable? Which I'm going to extend to not just idea product, but any kind of things that each of your company is offering. Just because I'd like to use your representative sample of the industry to get an idea of timelines. I'd like to start with you, Ari, because software is the thing I'd expect to be the fastest. It comes overnight, right?
Well, not exactly overnight, but it's definitely faster, right? So it's a great question. You know, I'm a student of history of the water industry, having been an investor in the industry before. And you look at like a company like Xenon Environmental, which basically invented MBR, and you say, okay, well, where's that threshold that something becomes accepted? Is it 50 facilities? Is it 100 facilities? You talk to some of the people that were at Xenon in the early days, and they'll say it took about 15 years. 15 years for it to get to that point where it was really accepted. Organica is a garden wastewater treatment company that I ran before, has 120 reference facilities today. It's been around for 23 years. Software is definitely going a lot faster than that, because we don't have to deal with the construction cycles in the same way. But there still are, you know, big behavior changes that have to come with design automation software like Transcend. I don't know the answer yet, but I can definitely say it's factors faster than infrastructure technology.
For our product-led innovators and entrepreneurs, what would be your take?
If I take it, I think first of all, we need to define what it means to introduce, right? Is that the first commercial installation, or is it 100 or 200, or when you reach a certain revenue? I listened to your podcast with Paul Callahan the other week, where he talked about the cycles of introducing a product into the market, and distinguish between whether you were in a crisis-driven market or whether you were in a need or value-driven market. And Cembrane is what are we, 7 years old? We have more than 250 commercial installations. But we have been very crisis-driven. We have been going from customer to customer that has had an immediate need for our technology. But if we were focused on the more value side of the market, I think according to Paul Callahan, it takes 10, 15 years before you really get a strong foothold onto the market.
It's according to data. I mean, Paul probably has an opinion on that, but beyond the opinion, if you look at UV, membrane, MBRs, it all took between the very beginning of their timeline until the moment they were in the middle of the market, 25, 35 years. And then you have to account for the 10 years of R&D. And then depending where you set the beginning of that line, it gives you a bit of an answer. In the chat, we had 10 years, and it gives me a bit... I know you said it jokingly, Ari, but that is often the thing of the overnight success. Often it's a 10-year overnight success, and people don't see the 10 years. They just see that all of a sudden it breaks their radar. So is it something you've experienced, maybe, Frederic, because you have a bit more of history regarding the path of H2 innovation? When would you say you were in the middle of the market?
Yeah, no idea what you just said. And this is the sentence I'm using: an overnight success after 22 years. Well, this is it. I mean, it's like, and then we're our new kids on the block. And then I'm getting gray hair and gray beard. But it is essentially a couple of things that you need. I think it's a combination of customers. You need to prove and bring your technology in the field. And you need to complete somehow like a full cycle in terms of product life cycle, in the sense that customer needs to see what happens. You know, how do you do maintenance of your product? How is it going to happen? What will be the cost? And see the effectiveness of your product. And this, you know, again, is time that you need. So I've always said it, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword. Your greatest, you know, ally is time, because you do have time in front of you to do things, and you will need this time. And your worst enemy is time as well, because if you don't get going today, you won't get there in 20 years. So you need that. And then you need also a certain number of customers. I mean, one customer won't be enough. So this is why also the 10-year, 10, 15 years, whatever threshold is important, because you need a multiple number of sites and multiple number of customers to showcase what you have done. And this is what we have built over the 22 years. You know, today it's 750 systems that we have installed in North America. Well, this is my greatest pride and the pride of our team, but boy, it took a lot of time.
Which leads me to the entrepreneurship element of it. When I look at the two youngest entrepreneur in the sense of how long you've been with your current business, so Walid and Ramzi, how crazy do you have to be to go into an entrepreneur route in the water industry, knowing that it's going to take you 10, 15, 20 years to be in the middle of the market?
I think I'm going to shut down the company now. I hope nobody from my team is on the call because Frederic just killed me. He said 22 years of success, so to get to the success. No, but on a serious note, it takes time, and you need a lot of patience. And that's why when we started and we focused more on consumable items, knowing that it's really challenging industry to go and sell a new solution and new technology. And of course, it's about picking up the right customer segment. If you go in a regulated environment, you will have much more challenges of introducing an innovation. While if you go in an industrial segment where they need to returns on investment, they need productivity, they need improvements, they will be more willing to take a risk to get to a better outcome. So I think defining really well the segment where we want to test and pilot and launch our innovation will make a big difference.
And for you, Ramzi, on a product level?
I would say, yeah, Droople is combining IoT and AI. So we have both burden hardware and software. But so which makes it very difficult to say that in 10 years we will be successful. A lot of unicorns have spent more than 10 years to be successful, actually. Even Google and others. So we maybe we forget that. But what gets you here won't get you there, and that's the truth I know in the innovation, entrepreneurship, and startup world. It means that even though you have made a great progress, you cannot really rely on what has happened before, but you have to really prepare very well for the future. And for us, actually, it means that after 1 year of commercialization last year, we have sold more than 100 units. That's great, but I would say it's a very confidential result, meaning that we have a great ambition for the future. Now you need a lot to be there. And for a startup, it means that you have to create partnerships or build partnerships, because alone, as maybe Frederic said before, it's also a strategy to combine strengths with other stakeholders in order to progress and be successful. Alone, it's very difficult. Moreover, in the water industry, because you have to rely on a value chain with established players, and that's a reality that may be even more relevant in the water industry than others.
The suggestion to partner up was coming in the chat. Björn Otto, I don't know that guy, but he was mentioning that if we combine all of your companies, maybe we have something which is even bigger than what you are. And I see that Ari answered him that he's wrong, like always. I'm really happy about that. He's wrong in the sense that you're already partnering with companies. But let me close that sidetrack. There's another question. Unfortunately, it's anonymous, so I cannot tell you who raised that question, but I think that's interesting in terms of entrepreneurship, because in our water industry, you often see people who are in the universities or in R&D environments and who have really great innovation, but the struggle is how to bring that innovation to market. And the question is, how do you go from a cool idea to the market? What's the first step? and how do you overcome the fear of failure, and how do you secure support? Who has advice for that question? It's broad.
Many questions.
Crucial.
So
Well, this fear, I think, has to be overcome, and again, the best idea, if you keep it in your basement, I mean, will remain in your basement. So you have to, as we said previously, Ramzi, and to the chat, that you have to team up and not be afraid to partner with good companies. That companies will be honest and respectful of your ideas and protect you somehow. But there's so many channels that exist right now that you can use to go to the market and use it to accelerate your go-to-market strategy. So you shouldn't be afraid to reach out to different companies, propose, piloting, propose to integrate your technology among the other platform that this company may have to accelerate your development. And yes, this 20 years overnight success might become a 10 or 2 or 5 years, who knows? But I think that's the idea.
just to build on that, I mean, I think it's a great point. If you look at some of the faster successes in water, they come from partnering like that, where there's an innovation and they partner up with a bigger company, and maybe today it's part of a bigger company. So that's a critical piece of it. But I also think when you're developing that idea in the lab, it's not just innovation for innovation's sake, right? So you have to say, okay, what is the value that this innovation is going to bring, and who's going to capture that value in the marketplace? Is it going to speed things up? Is it going to lower costs, capital costs or operating costs? Try to quantify that. I think that helps you overcome that fear, because once you start to get confidence in the value you can bring, then you can get partners to have that same confidence as well.
Yeah, and I will add on Ari's point. It's spot on. I mean, don't wait until the full idea is fully set, and then go and test it. Try as early as possible to test and reiterate and retest and reiterate, because there is no point of reaching the end and then discovering that's not really. I used to have a teacher, a marketing teacher, who used to say, the cost of being late exceeds the cost of being wrong. So just throw it in the fly, and keep fixing it.
Yeah, we say fail fast. We say fail fast a lot.
Correct.
Yeah. Launch fast, fail fast, and learn fast. That's.
Can I challenge that? Because that is, let's say, quite widely accepted in many business areas. But you've mentioned that the water industry is a special animal to that extent. And do we recover from a failure in the water sector exactly as fast as in another sector?
If you have your customer base widespread when you're testing something, as Frederic mentioned, if you have like multiple type of customers where you're testing the solution, then you will have a real understanding if it's going to fail or not. But if you just test with one customer and then you say, okay, it's failed, then you cannot recover because you're done. This is my opinion.
And it also depends on what kind of expectations you set up front, right? So, the failure is a perception question a lot of the time. And you set those expectations up front when you're doing it with the customer. So you have to manage that risk.
Exactly. And I think there is a good comparison between what is perceived as a risk or a failure for a big corporate and versus a startup. Actually, a startup takes a lot of risk or make much more failures for its size and capacity to sustain cost and so on, versus a corporate. But we see that startups are taking more risk than corporates. And that's very interesting, that actually we are still here for many of us. Some disappeared, and that's the law of the market. Sometimes you make a failure that is too big for you, and then you cannot recover. But that's really what is driving the innovation market and the startups that are innovating. So you have to overcome the failure or the risk of failure or the fear of failure. Otherwise, don't make a startup.
I think you've shared a lot of very valuable advice so far on this panel. What I'd like to have now is your dirty stories, because it sounds like you have a lot of very good advice on how to make things right. But I'm pretty sure it didn't happen just out of luck, and maybe sometimes you were not right and you knew, oh, that one, I'm not going to do it again. So let's save everyone in the audience the struggle of failure, if we can. What is the biggest mistake you've encountered on your path, and what would you certainly not do again?
Wow. I mean, as I said earlier, the experience is a summation of mistakes, right, that you do over life. So there was different mistakes or failures we had in HGO as we have evolved through the years. There might be one thing, and we have discussed about it earlier, but being too fast sometimes can play against you. Try to bring a technology, but this is what an entrepreneur does, right? And I mean, you're a dreamer. I mean, so yeah, sometimes I've been probably maybe too fast in some ideas and not maybe sufficiently time with the market. So that plays against us on some innovations and ideas that we're trying to push to the market. On the other hand, also never underestimate your need for working capital, in a sense that this is the blood of a business. If you don't have sufficient working capital in your business, you will suffer for a long time. So you should never underestimate working capital. And working capital is what essentially? Well, it's people, right? So if you don't have working capital, you cannot hire the right people, you cannot surround yourself with the right guys and the right team, and then you cannot push the right ideas to the right market. So working capital is really key. And in the early days, we have suffered from that, because this is not something that really the investors like to fund. I mean, typically they like to fund, the hardware. They like to fund the real assets, not the working capital. But this is needed in our business, because we need time and we need these investments, and we need the people to create and build the ideas that we want to bring it to the market. So.
Yeah, and on the subject of time, I think for us, one of the things I wish I knew better when we started was really understanding the time frame, the time scale in the specific market we were operating within. At some points, we were overly optimistic that we are piloting at this utility, and next year they're going to buy, and then in 3 years we have 20% of the market. But if you don't understand how badly, how desperate the market you operate within, you can run into trouble, and you can disappoint investors and your board, and that's very important to realize that early on.
It took us 20 years to become right with financial projections and sales.
Yeah, that's definitely incredible, actually, that you're currently right with financial projections, because there's very few water companies that are. So it's the when is always really hard to predict, and kind of underestimating how long something is going to take is probably up there with the biggest mistakes. The other one for me is people. I think like that when I think back to things that were the biggest impact, positive or negative, on the direction, it's bad choices around people. So find ways to really be process driven and scientific about how you interview and choose people and partners to work with and build your team, because that, especially for young startups, is just, it's disproportionately the main thing that impacts your success or failure, in my perspective.
Yeah, I totally agree, Khoury. The impact is so big that you cannot afford hiring wrong people, and if you do, it means that it will come at a high cost. That's for sure. From my point of view, I think we made a lot of mistakes. First, that maybe the water market maybe could be a strong or a fast adopting market, actually the truth is it is not, and we have to accept it somehow. Sometimes also we think that more innovation will accelerate or more disrupt the market, but actually this market is proportionally or unproportionally accepting too much innovation. So maybe think about your innovation as an iterative process where you build additional innovation one step at a time in order to actually let, as Frederic said, the life cycle actually you have to demonstrate that the life cycle of your innovation bring some TCO, some OPEX reduction, and you cannot demonstrate that within a year or within months. You need many years. And then you can say, we have been able, after 3 years, to reduce by blah, 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 10%, 20% of unplanned maintenance or consumable resale or whatever. So we have to admit that we have made mistakes. We will make again mistakes. And I think that's where entrepreneurship is doing mistake, learning from them, and make a better decision for the next step. That would be my best advice, I think. Make mistake, but yeah.
I'll add to Ramzi's
learn
point.
From it.
Yeah, we'll definitely make mistakes. There is no point. I mean, if we had the solutions, we'll not be here. The companies will have already been done in the past. Somebody else would have done. So one of the learnings for me was in this short, 14 months venture, is that I went for the partners who I thought will be the best in terms of suppliers, but I missed focusing on the synergy. Like we're an agile, fast-moving company. We're a startup. You can't be you cannot carry somebody who cannot move as fast as you in your approach to the market, and despite being the best products in the planet, you need to really have a company who can understand what agile means, can adapt and support you locally. So we don't think about these things when you start. You just say, okay, I have the best product, I have the best distribution model, I'll be successful. With other companies, we were doing really well, but with some of the suppliers, it can be a challenge.
You mentioned the keyword of agile, and actually I wanted to follow up on exactly that. How do you keep this agility? Actually, I'm stealing that question from Greg Madden in the chat. How do you really overcome whenever you have a problem or a challenge, and how do you decide it's time to pivot sometimes? And how do you foster this agility while growing a successful water company?
I replied just quickly on this one. So from what I learned from working in multinationals, like I've been in leadership roles for the last 20 years in GE and so on, take out the layer of leadership, make it as much as possible as streamlined. You don't want too many managers, and different organizations, different silos, each one of them talking to each other, and putting roadblocks. Just let people do their job, and remove all the roadblocks, and then things will flow.
I think there's a lot also related to the company's culture, which is very, very important, and that takes years to foster and to develop. And this is something that we should nourish every day, and we should protect, particularly these days where the market labor being so hard. But again, it takes years to develop the right company's culture, and I think this will allow you to overcome any failure, trips, or challenges that you will have if you have a strong company culture.
Yeah, totally agree, 100% with Fred. I mean, it's about culture, and hiring for culture is often a part of it. So we actually kind of rank people that we're interviewing around how well they fit with the culture, and that gets the most weight when we're going through an interview process. And then, but it's a lot of work. I mean, you really have to work at that culture, and especially as you grow, to have business processes that allow open dialogue so that people at all levels feel comfortable making mistakes, feel comfortable failing, and feel comfortable speaking up in meetings where people might be, various levels above them in the organization. I mean, you have to really work at it.
Yeah, I totally agree, Ari. It's really about mindset. First of all, agility is mindset, and you have to hire people that have and meet that mindset. And then, as Frederic said, you can build a culture around agility, innovation, and excellence, performance, and all those things come afterward, or are consequences of those of this mindset. And for me, we have in our team, and as long as you grow, product fights a bit with sales, because sales is trying to sell something that is not yet ready, and products are afraid, and all those things. But that's fine, and we need always to, and in our within the Drupal team, we have this triangle, and you have to always stand within that triangle, which is good enough, align or die, and need for speed. And those three conditions of the triangle, you have to always be within that. If you can stand in, then you are agile. If you cannot, it means that you are missing something. And it's not always easy, actually. Sometimes we have really strong fights, because as you are stretching the company, the organization, people sometimes need to protect themselves and then try to keep their comfortable zone. So it's, mindset.
I have two last topics because we are a bit running out of time. We could be doing 3 hours, but we have to be within our hour, which was assassinated by Walid.
Sorry.
Bad guy, Walid. My second last topic is marketing. We have a lot of marketing people, I guess, in the chat, or maybe the market is becoming quite marketing sensitive. How important is marketing in that mix of entrepreneurship and innovation? How important is it for your companies?
Well, I think it's huge. I think it's huge in a way that, particularly these days with the new medias and the new outreach, you're becoming overnight a global company. I mean, suddenly your customers are not in your backyard anymore, but they are everywhere. And I think now it's even more important to promote and present your products in a way that you're not necessarily looking at it from the gizmo or the perspective that, whatever the features or technology it is, but more of what is it going to bring and change the market? How is it going to help the customers? What will be the benefit for the customers? So if you don't do it with proper marketing, you will never be able to cross these ideas and push forward your product. And it's hard to do, because sometimes we're like, as engineers, we're trying to put more emphasis around, this new feature, this new things we have developed, more than try to think about what it brings to the customer. So marketing is absolutely key, and sometimes underinvested in most of the companies.
But what is marketing? Is it brochures, or is it going to your customers and trying to understand their pains and solve for their pains?
Yeah, and for us, it's communicating the value that our customers are getting from using the software. That's marketing. And if you can effectively do that, if you can effectively communicate the value your customers are getting, a lot of the other potential customers are very similar. So you can really start to build momentum by finding like customers who can achieve that exact same kind of value and say, oh, I understand, that utility, saved this amount of time or this amount of money on a feasibility study. I have 10 feasibility studies I'm doing this year. So that's what marketing is for us.
And I think it's shifting also to the direction of thought leadership. I mean, today customers are looking for partners who can drive, and help them sorting out their needs, not specifically with a product, but more with their product application expertise, the application expertise, the knowledge, demonstrating value, but also how they can bring other solutions to help them locally. And we've seen it where we've been successful is where customer first trusted the company and then after bought into the product. So it's changing with all the access to information, as Frederic mentioned, and Ari, like with all the access to information globally now, it's completely changing.
Talking of this access to information, and that was my second and last topic, I'd like to take the question from Theophilus Asidusago, who is asking, if you're just fresh out there and you want to look for support, platforms, networking opportunities, what would be your single advice? Where would you redirect people? Where shall they go to get that support they need in the early steps of their innovation or entrepreneurship venture? I'd like to have at least one from each of you.
I would say your podcast, by the way, is a good place to go, obviously. But exhibitions is something that has helped us a lot. Attending them, exhibiting at exhibitions, you get to meet hundreds of people in a few days' time, and able to take the pulse on the market. There are also conferences typically during exhibition that presents the newest data and the newest ideas on the market. So I think that's a very good source of to attend.
Yeah. So I'll put a plug in for Elemental Accelerator. Transcend was part of the Elemental Accelerator program. There's a lot of accelerator programs out there. H2O Innovation, Imagine H2O is another one, which is out there. So Elemental has been great for us from a networking point of view. Obviously, they also provide capital to innovation, non-dilutive capital. So highly recommend considering that.
Yeah, indeed, large channels like accelerators are always a great opportunity to showcase your tech, meet corporate partners or potential leads, and as well also reach out to potential investors. I would say that, yeah, go ahead, Antoine.
An accelerator interested in you, what's the trick?
To be part of an accelerator, you mean?
Yeah, how do you seduce an accelerator?
Oh, now, to be honest, there is so many accelerators happening that the offer is maybe, is more than the demand, actually. So I don't think that you have to seduce an accelerator. Now, if you would like to be part of a prestigious accelerator like E Combinator or maybe Imagine H2O, which is very specific to water, then you have to really foster and really prepare yourself with a very strong application and so on to be part of it. And most of the time you need to choose which accelerator is fit depending on your maturity stage, because sometimes you are trying to access to an accelerator that is maybe a stretch for you because you are still in the ideation stage or very, very early stage. And that's a very tricky aspect, because sometimes you are very disappointed because you are not selected, but it doesn't mean that it's a bad idea, but just maybe it's not the right time for you to apply for that accelerator.
Frederic, Walid, 1 minute left. Your top advice.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm very disappointed nobody mentioned the Desalytics Water Week, for people to go and learn about the water industry. I mean, we've had almost 400 years of combined experience among all the speakers in the last 3 days, and all packed in 5.5 hours. So where you can get all this condensed information. But on a serious note, also, LinkedIn remains the one of the most available platform where you can get professional content on the water industry, and it's underrated. People still use it for a job. I always advocate for using it for content and learning about the industry, building real networking relationship versus just, we all met originally the first time through LinkedIn and then in events, so I think it's one of the most platform. So.
And the closing word is for Frederic.
Thank you, Antoine, sorry, Frederic, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say LinkedIn, now that you mention it, but just get yourself in the traffic, whether it's through a conference, I mean, whether it's through social medias. I remember the first time I walked into a show in Denver at the ACE conference, I knew absolutely nobody. I just walked in with my suitcase and that was the beginning of my journey. So just expose yourself, get yourself in the traffic. Don't be afraid, don't be shy to share your ideas. I mean, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of problems related to water that needs to be solved. Everything we consume, everything we eat needs water. So if you want a war and if you want to resolve world's problem, you will have to resolve water first, for sure.
Which makes an awesome conclusion. And as we are already over time, I hand over to you, Walid. Thanks a lot to all of you.
Thank you, Antoine, for leading
Thanks.
this. And thank you to all our speakers. It was a really great session. I agree, we needed more time. I saw the discussion on the chat box. We needed definitely more time, but at the same time, we're trying to make it compact so we get the best out of it. So now we're moving to the next session. So on Zoom events, what you need to do is to go back to the lobby and log in again into the second session for those of you who are attending. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
A lot.
Pleasure. Bye.
Thank you.